Sound is the first sense that we become aware of, and it's also the last sense as well. So when we're looking at all of our senses, all of our human perceptual senses, then sound is often one that is overlooked. So this little video is to give you a quick tour of where in your mind, in your brain, in your auditory system, do you interpret sound? Where do you hear voices if you're hearing voices? Where are we telepathic? Because every human is telepathic. We're just not using that skill at the moment. We will one day, because what's happening is now communication is saturated with miscommunication. A lot of it's to do with our electronic communications, and we are missing vital pieces of information in that. But soon, everybody, some people say to you, well, I'm really psychic. And I have a little smile to myself, actually, because we're all psychic, and psychic ability and mediumship is actually just a tool in the toolbox. So probably not a good idea to identify your personality with just an ordinary tool. Nobody's special, and we're all gifted in that way, if that's the way you need to look at it. Personally, I don't. I just see these as skills that we use through our senses, and we are all evolving at the moment. So a lot of people, especially if they've been doing meditation or mindfulness, are now becoming perceptually aware of voices inside their head. So I've drawn you this really technical little diagram here. And this is just to show you and explain. So this is your ear. That's not hair, by the way. That's just your auditory nerve is always on. So this is external to your brain. So I'm going internal in a moment. I just wanted to show the window of human perception here is very small. So animals, for example, dogs, can hear beyond our window of human perception. Now, I ran an experiment years ago to expand this. So I showed that we are capable of hearing more than we currently think we are. But anyway, on to the subject today. So down here, low frequency, we go infrasound. Okay, so down here is when you'll hear all of the sort of darker voices. Now, I really need you to take what I'm saying on board, because the human species can absolutely halve crime rate and the need for medication if you understand that this capability to hear these darker voices is just you're tuning into some what I call a debunked spiritual radio. Because when people say to me, well, I can hear voices, I think, well, I'm not, I don't immediately rush to psychiatry, because I have a better understanding of spirituality and the whole holographic experience of who we are. And so I would always say, well, what are they saying? You see, it's only a problem if people then act on these sort of, let's call them the darker voices. And when you listen, they're all quite boring, really. They're all just saying the same thing to harm. So that tells me that that is not within us. That is coming from, I think it is an essence of the death instinct has found its voice in the low frequency sounds. I'm going to say something strange. If you haven't worked it out already, there's plenty of these types of information. Down here is where you're going to hear a scream. So if you suddenly hear this horrendous banshee, it's because you're in the lower frequencies. And of course, it's unfamiliar to you. So you will experience that throughout your body, and you may freak out a little bit. Don't freak out. It's not actually a human and a female scream. It sounds like it, doesn't it? I could talk about nature at this point, but I won't. I'll just stay in sound. And I'm going to say that it's actually not a scream as you and I would interpret it. It's fast moving air. Okay, so there's a lot of velocity to it. Now, up here is in the higher frequencies of the window. If you go up here, you're going to start to use your telepathic ability. So the problem that people encounter is if they've been doing a lot of meditation, a lot of mindfulness, and I mean, please, like, I'm an experienced teacher in this area. The Kundalini, do not just go poking about in that, because that's going to shoot up your spine, and all of a sudden everything in your unconscious is going to come forward into consciousness. And if you're not prepared, if you've not got people in place, and if you've not got the reading, what you're going to experience is all of your past trauma is going to suddenly come forward. Now, it comes forward for good reason and you can work through it, but I'm just telling you, if you're a rookie in this area, don't go poking your fingers into the electrical socket of the universe. And so telepathy, let me tell you, is our way of, I mean, it's such a fantastic way of communicating. Let me tell you where sound starts. It starts in the womb. And when we're in the womb, we are picking up on our environment. And this is why some people born with something called autism like the sound of water and pipes, in my view, anyway, my observations. And it calms them down. And that's because in the womb, we're listening to the sound of our mother's pipework and that water going around, which is quite, if you go underwater, it's quite a nice sound. It's very subtle. When you start to become telepathic, what's going to happen is that you're going to hear other people speaking in your mind. Now, they're not the dark voices that I've just told you. And by the way, we're just going to ignore those because, I mean, if you don't put any energy into them, what use are they anyway? It's, like I said, it's a debunked spiritual radio. What we're interested in is, as a species, evolving consciously. And we are going to become telepathic, to filter out all the noise, just to give you, to bring some religion into this. And I'm not going into it any more than just to tell you that within the Bible, there is this concept of the Tower of Babel. And I think Babel is the babbling of people around the bottom of the tower. And people are so busy arguing about who's right and what opinion's right, that none of them ascend up the tower to go back to the source, which is divine or universal or God, whichever terminology you prefer. And so our aim is to go back to the source and communicate here on earth with a divine source. Now, here we go into more spirituality and philosophy. Some people do spend their entire life talking to spirits and their spiritual guides, and it's, no big deal. It's we access it actually through intuition a lot. So, they'll just pop something into our consciousness. It'll just come forward or come down, depending, and we become aware of something in consciousness. And so when you're becoming telepathic, you're tuning in to other people's high frequency wave thoughts in the collective thought field. Okay, so consciousness isn't just within your head. It's we have a collection of all of our thoughts, low down and up in the ether. Now, I've shown you this as a two-dimensional drawing, and I'm talking to you two-dimensionally to help you get a location on, the parameters, but actually not just to take you too confusing, it is holographic. But I'm going to carry on with the two-dimensional. So if you're telepathic, you will be able to hear other people thinking, and it makes us all clean up our act, doesn't it, really? And you will also be able to transmit your thoughts to somebody else. Now, you do have to both be on the same frequency, and I will do a whole workshop on this. So follow the link below to pop your name into it. And then when I've created that media for you, I'll give you a shout and you can join in on the workshop. But what you need to know is, firstly, it is an ability. Secondly, you're not losing it. You're actually getting it. Thirdly, just experience it. But fourthly, and I've had a question from the community, how do you turn this off? So when it comes to the lower frequencies, just tell them to go away. And when it comes to the higher frequencies, you actually don't want to spend your time anchored into that collective thought field, because, you've got to get on with being human, at some point, and experience the lessons in the life here. But what you can do is you can go above it. You can go straight to the source and ask that to be turned off. You can go to people in the spiritual community to close down this ability for you if it's distressing. And you can also learn to bring yourself back into reality. I'm going to use that term loosely at this point. So back into our collective reality so that you calm it down. So what I'm saying is, if you are tuned in up here, God frequencies up here, our collective telepathic frequency is here, and your little mind is here, and this here, very interesting, you have an internal auditory system called the auditory loop. So this is where we talk to ourselves and hear music and this kind of thing. And that is the loop that's used for you tuning into other people's telepathy. But what you need to do is come back down and orientate yourself here and come here into reality. And I'm just going to leave you with a couple of things. Firstly, don't be too extraordinary, be ordinary and let this all calm down, especially if it's kind of flared up, let it calm down. And then the last thing I want to share with you is that when we spiritually leave our physical bodies, we leave from the feet up. Okay, some people have accidents and they suddenly catapult out of their body, but generally when we are more gracefully leaving the earth, we leave our senses in a particular order. So we start unplugging our senses in a particular order, and the last sense we have is sound. So know this, know that if you find somebody in an emergency situation, you must call their name, because the name can bring them back. And that they can still hear. If they look unconscious, that's because they're not in consciousness, but that doesn't mean to say they're not still there. So you can call their name and locate them back into consciousness, hopefully. Or if it's time for somebody to leave their body, according to not our timing, but the divine time for their particular life. I could go into stories, I won't. But if they are leaving their body and you're with somebody who's passing, then I absolutely would say to you, still talk to them, because they can hear. And they'll leave their body through the feet upwards. And then the last thing they hear is sound. And so make sure the last thing they hear is your voice sending them love. I hope this helps. Take care of yourself. Bye for now.